When a predator kills two people at once, the story turns darker. No one escapes, no one tells the ending, and love means nothing when the wild closes in. The first story begins in one of the most remote and unforgiving wilderness areas in North America. Katmai National Park in Alaska is beautiful in the way only dangerous places can be. Endless rivers, open tundra, and some of the largest brown bears on Earth. For most people, it is a place to visit carefully and then leave. For Timothy Treadwell, it became something else entirely. By 2003, Treadwell had spent years building a reputation as a bear enthusiast and self-appointed protector. He returned to Katmai again and again, filming himself near grizzlies, speaking to them, naming them, and presenting himself as someone who understood them on a deeper level than other people ever could. That belief shaped his whole life. It also shaped the final decision that killed him. That year, he was not alone. With him was his girlfriend, Amie Huguenard. She was a physician's assistant and, unlike Treadwell, had far less interest in living among bears. She had come with him to Alaska near the end of the season when many of the salmon were already gone and the bears were under more pressure to find food. That detail changed everything. Late in the season, the bears in Katmai are often more unpredictable. Food becomes scarcer, conditions become harsher, and the animals still left inland may be more aggressive than the ones people imagine from nature documentaries. Treadwell had been warned before about pushing too far, staying too long, and getting too comfortable. But comfort was the illusion he built his identity on. He believed proximity meant understanding. He believed familiarity meant control. It did not. On October 5th, 2003, an old male brown bear attacked the camp. What exactly happened in the first seconds will never be fully known, but the outcome was catastrophic. Treadwell was killed first. Huguenard was then attacked as well. Investigators later confirmed that an audio recording of the attack existed because the camera had been running, even though no image was captured. The footage the world never saw may be one of the most haunting details in any wildlife fatality case, because it meant the final terror was preserved, but never meant to be heard. When authorities arrived the next day, both were dead. The bear was still at the scene and was shot. Investigators later recovered the camera, the camp, and the evidence of just how completely the fantasy had collapsed. For years, Treadwell had acted as if repeated exposure had earned him acceptance, but wild predators do not grant acceptance. They grant tolerance until something changes. Hunger changes, stress changes, season changes, one mistake changes, and then the illusion is gone. That alone would have been horrifying. But what makes this case linger is how preventable it feels. Treadwell had spent years normalizing closeness to one of the most dangerous animals in North America. He had turned risk into identity, and when the final encounter happened, Amie Huguenard died with him in a world she had never tried to master in the same way. That is what makes the story feel so heavy. One person's confidence became two people's ending. But if the Alaska case feels like the tragedy of overconfidence, the next one is almost worse because this couple did many things right. Banff National Park in Alberta is one of the most famous wild landscapes in the world. Towering mountains, alpine forests, cold rivers, and the promise of real wilderness. People go there for peace, for challenge, for beauty. Doug Inglis and Jenny Gusse loved exactly that kind of life. They were both 62, longtime partners, and by all accounts deeply experienced in the backcountry. They were not tourists wandering blindly into danger. They were the kind of people others would call prepared. That is what makes what happened in late September 2023 so unsettling. Doug and Jenny were camping in a remote area of Banff near the Red Deer River Valley. Earlier in the day, they had messaged family to say they were delayed but safely at camp. Nothing in that message suggested panic. Nothing suggested finality. Then, hours later, everything narrowed into 3 words. Bear attack bad. That was the emergency message they sent through their satellite device. Just 3 words, typed from deep in grizzly country, somewhere in the dark, while something enormous was tearing through the thin barrier between shelter and open wilderness. Rescue teams were dispatched immediately, but the location was so remote that reaching them took hours. This was not a place where help could arrive quickly. This was a place where you survived the first minutes on your own, or not at all. When rescuers finally reached the coordinates shortly after midnight, they found Doug Inglis, Jenny Gusse, and their dog dead. Then the bear charged the response team too. Officers shot and killed it on site. What happened at the campsite tells its own terrible story. The tent had been crushed. The couple's belongings were still there. Their food had reportedly been stored properly. The can of bear spray had been emptied. Doug and Jenny were found outside the tent without shoes, which suggests the attack came so suddenly and escalated so fast that they barely had time to react before being forced into the open. That detail changed everything, because it means this was not a case of reckless behavior or obvious carelessness. They had experience. They had equipment. They had communication. They used the bear spray. They called for help. And still, the grizzly overpowered all of it. Later, officials said the bear was an older female in poor condition, with bad teeth and less body fat, than expected for that time of year. In other words, it may already have been under physical stress heading into winter. That does not provide a simple explanation, but it does widen the tragedy. Sometimes a fatal wildlife encounter is not just about where humans failed. Sometimes it is also about what condition the animal was already in before the encounter began. What makes the Banff case so hard to forget is that it tears apart a comforting belief many people have about wilderness. We like to think that preparation creates safety, that the right gear, the right experience, and the right decisions will protect us. Often they help, but not always. Doug and Jenny appear to have done many things right, and the wild still closed over them anyway. And that is where the fear deepens. Because if even experience is not enough, then what exactly are people trusting when they walk into predator country? The final case takes us to central India, where the line between daily life and wild danger is often far thinner than outsiders realize. In parts of Madhya Pradesh, forests are not distant scenic escapes. They are woven into ordinary routine. People pass near them, collect resources from them, and live close to animals capable of sudden violence. That overlap creates tension that is easy to ignore until it breaks. On June 5, 2022, Mukesh Rai, 43, and his wife Gudiya, 39, were together near a forested area in Panna district. Reports differ slightly on the exact reason they were there, but they were moving through a place that was familiar enough not to feel extraordinary. That is what makes the beginning so chilling. There was no dramatic expedition, no remote campground, no sense that they were stepping into a known nightmare. For them, it was just part of the day. Then they encountered a sloth bear. Sloth bears are among the most feared wild animals in India for a reason. They are not giant in the way grizzlies are, and they do not carry the same mythic image as lions or tigers, but they are explosive, defensive, and capable of devastating attacks at close range. When surprised, they do not need much time to decide, and when they commit, they do so with frightening speed. According to reports, the bear attacked Gudiya first. Mukesh tried to save her and the bear turned on him as well. That instinct is easy to understand. In nearly every fatal couple attack, one person tries to pull the other out. That is what love looks like under sudden terror. It is also what makes these stories so devastating. They do not run in opposite directions. They stay. They reach back. And sometimes that shared instinct becomes the reason neither one escapes. Witnesses later described the aftermath in deeply disturbing terms. The bear remained in the area for hours, and forest personnel had to respond and eventually tranquilize it. Officials later said the animal may have been rabid, which could help explain some of the behavior that followed the attack. But by then, that detail no longer changed the outcome. Mukesh Rai and Gudiya were dead, killed together in a place close enough to ordinary life that the shock spread quickly through the surrounding community. That is what gives this case its own unique weight. The Alaska story was built on overconfidence. The Banff story was built on the collapse of preparation. But the Panna case was built on proximity, on the reality that in some parts of the world, predator territory is not somewhere people visit for adventure. It is where life already happens. And once again, the same pattern returns. The moment danger appears, the bond between two people becomes both human and tragic. One tries to save the other. Neither leaves. That is the thread connecting all three of these cases. Timothy Treadwell and Amie Huguenard in Alaska, Doug Inglis and Jenny Gusse in Banff, Mukesh Rai and Gudiya in Madhya Pradesh. Different countries, different predators, different circumstances, but the same brutal ending. Two people facing the wild together and dying together when the animal in front of them stopped seeing fear, gear, experience, or love as something that mattered. What makes these stories more disturbing than a typical attack is not just the violence, it is the collapse of shared safety. Couples move through the world with a quiet assumption that being together offers protection, emotional protection, practical protection, the feeling that if something goes wrong, there will be another person beside you to help carry the danger. But predators erase that assumption instantly. In these cases, the second person did not become the rescue. The second person became the second victim, and that is why these stories stay with people. Not because they are rare, though they are. Not because they are graphic, though the realities were severe. They stay with people because they expose something deeper and more uncomfortable. The natural world does not recognize human bonds. It does not care how long two people loved each other, how much experience they had, or whether one died trying to save the other. Once the attack begins, all of that meaning belongs only to us. For the predator, there is only instinct, stress, territory, hunger, fear, or opportunity. For the people caught in front of it, there are only seconds. And for everyone watching afterward, there is the same haunting question every time. At what exact moment did an ordinary shared day become the last one? These were not myths. They were not movie scenes. They were real couples, real predators, and real endings that unfolded in places where the wild was never as far away as it seemed. Tell me which case hit you hardest. The false trust of Alaska, the failed preparation in Banff, or the sudden horror in Panna. And once you do, consider the one lesson all 3 stories leave behind. In predator country, being together may comfort you, but it will not protect you.